And welcome to Thrift Shop Biography. This is the one about Drew Barrymore. Thank you for listening. Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
I'm all right, thanks. Been reading the autobiography of Drew Barrymore this week.
Yes, well, one of them, because this is the one she wrote in 2015 called Wildflower.
And would you actually call it an autobiography?
No.
Because she said that the publishers approached her, they wanted to call it a memoir. And then she said, I don't feel it's a memoir. And she's right, because it is of sorts.
It's called a collection of autobiographical essays.
They're not really essays, are they?
No.
They're like rambling train of thoughts of the last 2 pages.
Yeah. And it has now come to light that she wrote, she wrote an autobiography when she was, really young?
About 14.
Yeah.
Because she'd lived by that point in her life, hadn't she?
Oh, yeah. And actually, we should probably get a hold of that.
Well, if it ever comes up in a thrift store, which it most likely might because it's so old. And
You need to do a trip to America and raid the shops
Goodwills.
Because, there's so many books we need that we can't find here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
anyway.
Do you like Drew Barrymore?
She's all right. I mean, she's amazing in E.T. She's exceptional in E.T. Plus, not so long ago, I watched Scream for the first time. She's astounding in that. I nearly shat myself because of her, because she was so terrified that I was terrified.
Yeah.
Oh, she was standout amazing in that. I know that's a weird one to pull out.
No, because that was such a good move on part of the film, because she was the most famous actor in that film at that time.
Yes, you don't think she'll get killed.
Yeah, and in the first 10 minutes, she's gone, which is so exciting for then that movie.
It is actually, yeah.
And so, no, I remember that as being quite iconic. Yeah, but that 10 minutes, she's full on the whole time. Yeah.
And other times I think I find her a little bit false.
Did you find this book false?
Oh, yes, I did.
Okay.
At some points I thought, are you having a laugh? You're literally just writing this for your girls. For your little girls who grew up to read about their mum. This isn't your real life.
Oh, so you felt that as well.
That's what I felt. Did you?
I felt she was masquerading as a nice middle-class housewife and mom.
Yeah.
Well, we know the truth, because you've been around as long as we have.
Come on, yeah. I mean, she's been in the press forever and she can't pretend she hasn't. And she says at one point her friends give her a 5-year journal so she can write every single day things for her daughters. And I thought, well, that's what this is. This is a scam. It's a little bit annoying.
Now she's got her talk show.
Yeah.
So she's kind of reinvented herself as kind of an Oprah / Ellen
and
character.
She's
She's very wholesome.
a lovely, wholesome person.
I do believe she is lovely and wholesome. I think there's something very endearing about her. But if you're going to write your collection of memories, don't disclude all the wild child stuff. She's glossed over so much.
Massively glossed over.
But it's an intriguing book, and I think there's lots to talk about.
There definitely is. You get to know her to a point. You definitely do get to know her.
Well, we can fill in the gaps.
We can fill in the gaps. Yeah. And
so should we get on with it?
Yeah.
Drew Barrymore.
Drew Blythe Barrymore. If you go in her family tree, they've all got a variation of the same names. There's so many John Barrymores and Blythe Barrymores and Drews.
So she's part of the Barrymore acting dynasty, but at the same time, she's kind of not, because they were all gone before she was born.
Yeah.
Her dad is the son of John Barrymore. So the Barrymores, John Barrymore, Ethel Barrymore, Lionel Barrymore, were huge American film stars at the turn of the century.
Huge. Right? And they trace back, and I did not learn this through this book, I learned this from online. They trace back even further to their parents, to her great-grandparents. And it traces right back to the London stage.
Does it?
Yeah, and they emigrated to America, got into silent movies, became stage actors. Yeah, I mean, they're like royalty.
Well, they're called the royal family of American acting, aren't they?
Yeah.
So Drew is part of that. That is her history. That is her family tree. But it was all over because her dad, who was the son of John Barrymore, basically was a bit crazy, lost all the money, and he was a real dropout by the time he fathered Drew. There was nothing left. All she had were the tales, people telling her this is your granddad. Because we're always told she comes from this amazing acting dynasty, but actually in a way she doesn't, because she was never part of it.
Yeah.
But when she first starts booking those first jobs, I'm sure it's because her mum's in there saying, well, she's a Barrymore.
I'm sure of that. That's how you get in over all the other kids.
Yeah.
So did you imagine, like I did, that you'd read this biography and you'd get all this growing up in Hollywood in a big mansion and swimming pool with these amazing actors all around? I thought that.
Yeah.
And it was not that at all.
It was
She's
complete
in some
opposite.
little apartment in a bit of a scummy area with
single mom.
Yeah, single mum.
Because she says she's never lived with her dad. She's never sat down to a meal with her mum and dad at the same time. Well, her dad was always off doing stuff anyway. He was never going to be in the house raising a family. She very much grew up in a single parent family in a duplex in a seedy area of West Hollywood.
Yeah, with her mum doing a few jobs, waitressing, bar.
She worked at the Comedy Store and the Troubadour. She was an aspiring actress, though, right, Mum?
Yeah, she actually did bits of acting. And her dad was an actor, very handsome and very promising.
Yeah.
And it got some parts and then self-sabotaged, basically, and became a hippie, weed-smoking, crazy man.
Well, he clearly had mental health issues, didn't he?
Clearly
I feel sorry for people who were like that 50 years ago. They weren't really getting the provision that they might get now. I'm not saying it's perfect now.
But then also, you can only imagine his upbringing with his incredibly famous parents and very privileged childhood where he probably didn't even see his parents.
Yeah, right.
And all of that madness that goes with that.
God, we know that too well now.
So it trickles down.
These kids of massively successful, famous parents do tend to end up with not great lives themselves. Oh, it's so sad.
But you're right about using the Barrymore thing. I remember reading about David Hasselhoff once, and he said that he couldn't get anywhere. He went to all these agents, nothing. Eventually, he'd had it, and he said, I'm the nephew of some old Hollywood star. And they went, oh, wow, and signed him immediately. And he made it up.
Really?
He made it up.
Wow.
So if you're actually a Barrymore and you're actually the granddaughter of John Barrymore, it is going to open doors completely.
Yeah, because I think her mum, who obviously is an aspiring actress, as soon as Drew is born, as she's a baby, she's taking her to commercial castings and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Then at that point, when you literally have a baby, which is pretty much indistinguishable amongst other babies.
Yeah.
So if the casting director, which baby to choose, and all of a sudden, no, this one's the descendant of the Barrymores. Oh, we'll have the Barrymore baby.
Exactly.
Yeah.
By the way, her mum, very attractive, was a real disco woman.
Yeah.
Yeah, she looked great in the photo in the book. And she was born in a camp for refugees in Germany. They were on the run from Hungary. She was actually born in this camp, and then her parents split up within the camp. Her dad said her mum was really mean and met someone else. Then the three adults with the kid all emigrated to Pennsylvania together. Mm-hmm. It's an unusual start for her mum, which does explain some of her mum's incapability of being a parent.
Well, yeah, both of her parents were incapable of being. I mean, she says as much, doesn't she?
She does. They just weren't cut out to be parents at all. So she had the most vulnerable childhood, just totally and utterly unstable.
Yeah, she says, my mother and father were both incapable of being parents, but I don't fault them for it. My therapist would disagree.
Yeah, I would definitely say she does. Oh, it's one of those where it's so obvious the different problems she has completely stems from her upbringing. She comes across as very fragile and very broken. Actually. And
needy.
Yeah.
Like she is searching for the family she never had.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the problem of this book is that she's so, like, spoiler alert, she has it now. She's happily married with 2 kids and wonderful in-laws. And I think she's so determined to kid herself that she's always been part of this middle-class nice family that she's forgetting about all the terrible stuff that happened because she's not really, she mentions it in this book. There are huge chapters of her life that we know about that aren't even mentioned. Yeah. And I think it's because she might not want to put off her nice new in-laws that she clearly is in love with.
Yeah.
She doesn't want to tell them.
I agree. It's like she actually just wants a fresh start. She's writing this book about the person she wants to be. This is the book about herself she wants to read.
And you're right, it is the book that she would be happy for her daughters to read, and she would be happy for her lovely new in-laws to read.
All they have to do is Google her.
Yeah, I'm sure they have already.
It'll be like, what's the story, Sleeping Beauty? Ban all the internets. Throw all the internets away. There's one in the attic on their 18th birthday. Put in Drew Barrymore. Go on. Oh, my God.
Which is a shame because of the fact she has a talk show and she does talk so open. I've never watched it, but I imagine if you have a talk show, you talk openly about your life.
Yeah. I've watched it a bit. It's just so gushy.
It's twee, isn't it?
Yeah, she sits there all cross-legged and,
holding hands with the
it's
people.
all like, it's just not my sort of thing.
But this book is very much like that. It is quite twee and gushy, and how we're not going to dwell on the dark stuff.
She's very emotional and spiritual.
I guess that's just the period of life she's in right now, and that's when she's writing this book, is who she wants to be.
It is, isn't it?
I mean, I can't blame her for that.
I can't either.
But it just makes a bit of a boring book.
It does. Well, it does, but there's some cracking stories.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I was like, when I got it, I flipped through. I was like, please say you're going to mention E.T. Oh, great. Okay, I'll carry on now. Anyway, it's all right. She mentions actually getting to know her dad at the point where her dad has cancer. She spends a lot of time with him. Bloody hell, he is totally nuts, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's smoking tons of weed, even in the home she finds for him.
Yeah, I think he gets thrown out of a hospice for weed and bad behaviour.
So she gets a really long pillow and puts it under the door so the weed can't escape. And he's holed up there with weed and lemons. Hundreds of lemons. Yeah. He's absolutely obsessed with lemon juice. Covers himself in it. So bizarre.
It was quite sweet reading about her looking after him and visiting him a lot when he was dying of cancer. And they would have a golf buggy. No, he had a golf buggy. She had no idea where he got it from. But she would take her dogs and they'd go off in this golf buggy. It sounded like they had some really nice times together towards the end. I'm glad she had that.
It's a bit of closure.
Yeah.
She hasn't had that with her mother. It says that after she was 14, they pretty much haven't spoken since. Yeah. But it's weird because it's that reading between the lines that you're forced to do in this book because the therapy hasn't kicked in yet, I think. Yeah. I think she almost needs to write this when she's about 70. But she says things like, my mum dropped me off at karate. She took me to dance classes. She took me to this and this and this. I didn't like any of it apart from the karate. And you're like, your mum's taking you to all this stuff. A lot of parents don't even do that. Yeah. And cynical, you might say, is training her up to earn money. I can't judge it. She was clearly a nightmare. She was clearly a nightmare. Yeah.
Yeah, she wasn't
because she was also taking her to Studio 54 at age, 13? 12?
Yeah, Drew says it was so good, but it was so wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, another thing that I've read, I guess, in the tabloids, or I'm sure Drew has talked about it before, is like at the age of 13, she was doing cocaine at Studio 54. She does not say that in this book.
Yeah, but she says she was in Studio 54 and then they put her in rehab. Yeah, so you can read between the lines. How was she getting let into Studio 54?
Because she was famous.
Is that it?
Yeah.
What a kid.
Brooke Shields was getting in at the age of 13 as well. Really? I think it was kind of like a place where like the cream of society went, and if you were in...
It was lawless, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Anyway, back to the childhood.
So she got a couple of dog food commercials.
Yeah.
So she was like a little jobbing baby actor.
She was a little job because there's a point where she says this is how she learned about acting. Two things, but one of them is as a little kid, she was only 4 years old. She was a little kid in a play that her mum was in. And it's set in a German concentration camp or something. And this one woman had to go through hell every single night, crying, wailing, bringing all this emotion out of her. And she couldn't understand how this woman could do this night after night after night. And she went all around the theatre trying to find the answers. And eventually, before the show, she found her in this darkened studio, lying on the stage, pounding her chest and wailing and crying and bringing that emotion out of her. And that once she discovered this, she went every night and watched this woman secretly do this every single night so that she could come into the play completely distraught. And that taught her about acting and that you don't just act it, you have to find it within yourself and pull it out of you and be real and make it personal. And she said, I was only 4 years old when I learned that about acting. That's amazing.
And her mum was studying at Lee Strasberg when she was a kid. And because she was a single mother, she would take Drew along. So Drew was hanging out with actors at that young age. Yeah. And of course, being a Barrymore baby, I'm sure she was indulged and everyone was excited to meet her. So it was a great place for her to be inspired.
Yeah, and whilst she didn't feel safe in her childhood, her mum also sort of left her with the best people. Yeah. Because she left her at Lee Strasberg's, and his wife, Anne, was really like a second mother to her. And their house, she said, was like a commune, and every famous writer, director, actor was in and out of there. And she, as a little kid, was just hanging out there amongst these people. And she said she often slept, if Lee Strasberg wasn't there, she often slept in bed with Anne, just cuddled up to her. it's a hippie existence, but her mum really put her in the right places.
Yeah, for sure. And then the horror film Poltergeist came up, and Drew got an audition for it. As we all know, the role actually went to little Heather O'Rourke.
I don't know that because I don't watch horror films.
Oh, okay. Another
Scream,
little,
which ruined me. It's terrifying.
Another very pretty little blonde 6-year-old girl who actually died of bowel cancer a couple of years after. Blimey. Lots of weird things happened to people who starred in that film. There's lots of conspiracy theories about the making of Poltergeist. Anyway, the director of that film wasn't available for the auditions, so the producer auditioned the kids, and that happened to be a man called Steven Spielberg. And he loved Drew, but he felt she wasn't right for Poltergeist because, and this makes sense now, Heather O'Rourke is very placid and kind of ghostly in herself, which kind of I think needed for the role, whereas Drew is really loud, outgoing, of course, because she's been hanging out with everyone. And Steven Spielberg thought she's not right for this, but she's right for a film I'm making called A Boy's Life. Were you a bit confused? Because so there's this film called A Boy's Life which was in production, and they needed a little 4-year-old girl to be the little sister of these two boys.
She's 6 at this point.
Okay, so she's 6. And these boys befriend a little alien from another planet called E.T. And A Boy's Life was the working title of the film, so they could kind of keep it under wraps. But the whole time at the beginning of this book, Drew is talking about this film called A Boy's Life, and she said that she was on the set with Henry Thomas and Robert McNaughton. And I thought, well, they're the kids in E.T. And then it turns out that she's actually talking about E.T. Hey, she said that all those kids on E.T. had to go to school during the day, 4 hours of schooling by law. And she said 2 of the kids, a boy and a girl, had no legs, and they were the kids who got in the E.T. costume.
Isn't that amazing? That was really interesting. There's actually an amazing opportunity for 2 kids to actually be E.T.
Yeah.
She also said that no matter how many times she saw them take the heads off for air and everything like that, she still believed in E.T. as a being, even though she knew he wasn't. And at her lunch breaks, she used to put a napkin round him and sit and have her lunch and talk to him.
Yeah.
That's so cute.
Or nuts.
Yeah, she is a bit nuts. There's no doubt she's a bit nuts.
But she's 6 years old.
But she's also a bit nuts by being forced into massive isolation as a child. Because she says, right, when she got the phone call that says she's got the job for E.T., she was so happy. She ran into her room and just looked at her poster friends. The posters on her wall, people like Blondie and all sorts. And she looked at them for their reaction.
Yeah.
And she was friends with the flowers, and that's why she's obsessed with flowers.
Yeah.
And when the flowers got cut down, she actually nearly had a breakdown. Well, she did have some sort of breakdown when the flowers got cut down. And she says now her gardener has to talk her carefully through all the pruning he's going to do so that she's okay with it. So, she's definitely...
She is connected to the larger planes of the universe, isn't she, from being a child?
And being incredibly isolated and needing to find connection where she doesn't have any. She has no brother, sister, parents, really. So she can talk to posters, E.T., flowers,
and she only has these mythical grandparents that people talk about, but she's never met.
No.
And her mum is a bit of a wayward...
Completely wayward.
So she is, you're right. She's very isolated from a very young age. Yeah.
And like she says, those E.T. boys became the brothers she'd always imagined she'd have.
And Steven Spielberg became the father.
Absolutely.
I knew that, In fact, I saw a clip of them online in the last year where he Zoomed her and they just had such a nice conversation. It's so clear. I mean, she pays tribute to him in this book about him opening the doors to her life by casting him in E.T., but then basically never letting her go and supporting her all the way
But she actually says that her mother is the person that instigated that. She said her mother knew how she felt about him, and she asked Steve if he would be her godfather and not leave her. So she isn't the worst mother ever. I mean, she's obvious. Well, she took a Studio 54. Okay, there's a lot we don't know. She's put the positive things in, and she's missed out a lot of the negative things, hasn't she? Yeah.
Well, actually, Drew's now, again, in keeping with Mariah Carey, Tina Turner, and everyone else who looks after their terrible mothers.
She financially looks after her.
Yeah.
She'd literally fall apart if she thought her mother wasn't okay. So she financially looks after her, but she doesn't speak to her.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, that none of these massively famous people and now Drew Barrymore, even though she's had a terrible experience with her mother and is at great odds with her, got emancipated from her at the age of 14. Still says, I couldn't bear it if anything happened to my mum, so I still support her.
I want to say this, right, to do with E.T. again. When she went to that audition, she knew she wanted to get that job. She wasn't just a cute kid who got the job. She really fought for it. And she said the reasons she wanted it is because she wanted the adventures that would come with it, but she also wanted to get out of her loneliness. So she really fought, and she had all this imaginary life that she was the leader of this punk band. The punk band had a name, and she was telling Steven Spielberg all about this stuff. So she was working it. Age 6, she really worked it.
She was a veteran at this point.
Yeah, she kind of was. And when she was kind of hard inside. And when she went back for the recalls, she said on the way she was going to have to think of some more stories to impress him some more. So she was working on some stories to sell herself. She really fought for it.
Wow.
She wasn't as cute as you might think. Mm-hmm. She's harder than you think.
Savvy,
yeah. Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. I find the whole arc of her life very interesting because, as we know, she got that success. I love it where she says she's working on this fun little film and she's having the time of her life with her new big brothers, her kind of adopted dad, and this cute alien who she kind of just thinks is a real being. But what actually is beyond her concept at this moment in time is that film can go and become the biggest film in the world. And in fact,
idea.
Yeah, and when it does, she says, I can't believe our little fun experience became this massive thing. So to her, it was always just, like you were saying, an adventure.
Yeah, because you couldn't have the internet or everything. They showed on the news eventually people coming out of the cinema with all these emotions. They're crying and happy and just feeling all these emotions, and it really connected, and it surprised them all how much it connected. Probably not Steven
It was highly emotional.
It's the first film I ever saw at the cinema. I mean, when E.T. died, I died.
Did you?
I mean, I just couldn't get over it. And even though he came back to life, sorry if you haven't seen it, but I still wasn't over it. I couldn't get over the grief. So I was a mess even to the end. And part of that is her. Because she was sobbing. She said they filmed it in chronological order, which they never do these days. So by the time it got to the end, she's massively crying because her little family's going to end. Yeah. And she's absolutely heartbroken. So she's sobbing. Her heartbreak really affects you. That's part of it.
She is good in that. I mean, she is particularly good.
She really is, yeah.
And Elliot, all the kids
all
are
really
actually.
Good,
yeah, it's a good film.
It is a good film. It's a classic.
It is.
Yeah.
So E.T. is like this massive thing. Now, she doesn't talk about every film she's done in this book. I think the next film she talks about is this one where they all filmed in Germany and she was 11. And that's when she started drinking alcohol.
Beer.
Because she said there was a number of... Keanu Reeves was on that as a young actor.
Keanu Reeves.
So there was a group of young kids living in this hotel, and she said some of them were 16. You had to be 18 to drink, but, they were 16. And she said it all came out in the wash, and basically all the kids had alcohol every night. Yeah. And at the age of 11, Drew was getting drunk and doing pranks around the hotel.
With 16 and 18-year-olds.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was some sort of Christmas movie called Babes in Toyland.
Yeah.
And they needed a lot of animals, so they got all these kids from the American army-based schools and stuff.
Yes.
Anyway, all these kids were going wild. It was like rock and roll in that hotel.
Yeah, but with children.
Children!
And they would take all the laundry that the guests had left outside their rooms and go and throw it in the river.
Yeah, and out of the balcony.
Yeah, and Drew said she found a pair of shoes and she threw one shoe in and then all of a sudden thought, oh no, this person needs these shoes. And all of a sudden she felt terrible about it.
Struck her conscience.
Yeah, and she went back to her room on her own and she said that haunted her for the rest of her life that she threw somebody's shoe in the river.
Yeah, I bet she was the youngest one though, because I bet she'd have been the star and then all the other kids were older. Talk about leaving her to it though. Who's not looking after this 11-year-old kid?
Oh, never used to back in the 80s, did they? It's not like today.
I mean, she's having a great time by all accounts.
Yeah.
Also, I'm very much guessing that she doesn't think she's 11, if you know what I mean.
No, I don't think she thinks she's 11. She's always hung out with adults.
Yeah.
And she's had a career.
Yeah.
She's been all over the world at this point. She's a grown-up.
Yeah. It all comes full circle right at the end of this book when she goes to Africa and meets all these kids in schools. And she goes through a real cathartic process of realising she doesn't know how to relate to kids because when she was a kid, she was being an adult. Mm. And she's never really been a kid. She said all the teenage wild stuff was trying to recapture some kid thing, which of course you're not doing, because getting drunk isn't being a kid.
Yeah.
So actually finally meeting all these kids and having kids made her connect with childhood for the first time.
So her career, so she makes a few more films and then she does go off the rails, doesn't she? Because her mum's taking her to Studio 54. Now, she only mentions it in this book, which is very frustrating because I want to know the details. But she says that her mum sent her to an institution for 1.5 years. Did you know that?
No, I did not.
I kind of get the impression it's one of these institutions. You know, like how Paris Hilton was kidnapped in the middle of the night and taken to this like hard labour camp for teenage girls.
Well, she's talked about that and it sounds appalling.
I reckon this is the same kind of thing. But basically, her mum, Drew's mum, took her to this place one day and just walked out and they locked the doors behind her. And then Drew was there for 1.5 years. Which does tell you, well, it tells me two things. It tells her that her mum's not great at coping with her anyway, which we knew.
Yeah.
But it also tells me that Drew probably is out of control at this point.
She said my mum couldn't deal with my anger. And at this point, my anger just was out of control and I was out of control. Anger, eh?
Well, her dad is very angry because she said that at one point when she's living with her mum and her granddad is visiting, the dad comes around and smashes the house up.
Yeah.
So he has anger problems.
Oh, yeah.
Which Drew must have some of them.
Yeah, and she only mentions that one time because of how lovely her granddad is, because he went out with her dad, they got drunk together, which was how he had to do it, and then he returned with the key to the house so that her dad didn't have a key anymore. So that's the only reason she mentions that one incident.
Yeah.
So I imagine her dad's a constant...
Oh, yeah, he is.
Threat.
Yeah. So, she actually says when she talks about her dad, I don't really know where to begin other than to say he simply wasn't a dad. He was this mythical creature, part unicorn, part violent storm.
Wow.
So he's an angry man. Yeah.
So anyway, all this is combined and all the drinking and everything to totally mess her up, and her mum can't handle her and she's stuck in an institution for 1.5 years.
Also, what I do know, of course, let's not forget that Drew is tabloid fodder at this point.
She is.
Because she's been this child star. She's gone off the rails. Her mum has taken her to Studio 54 at the age of 11. This is all over the tabloids. So also her mum has the pressure of the world looking at her, saying what a terrible mother you are. She probably then thinks at that point, I am beyond my own capabilities. I need to put her in an institution for 1.5 years.
Stop taking her to Studio 54. I better lock her up. That's the only way I can stop doing that.
I know, right?
So what? She doesn't mention that this was all in the tabloids. She doesn't really talk about that. She does talk about the fact that she went into an institution which was sort of classed as rehab. It killed her career because everyone said she's gone nuts. She's doing drugs as a kid and they all just leave her alone. They won't touch her. She only says that. This is the sort of thing where she doesn't say anything. She says that rehab is full of damaged people like her, and she doesn't mention anything else about that whole experience.
I know, which, to be honest, Drew, this is the things you tell us if you're going to write your memoir. Well, you're going to write an autobiography. These are the things that we want to know.
I mean, we'll fill in the gaps because we've read other people who've been locked up and we imagine it's a bit like that.
Well, so from my understanding of this book, because she doesn't tell us too much, is that so from the age of like 11, she's in an institution for 1.5 years. And then at the age of 14, she takes her mother to court to become emancipated.
Yeah.
And then in California, a judge says to her, OK, from this day onwards, you're considered an 18-year-old adult.
Yeah.
So at the age of 14, she goes and rents an apartment and gets a job.
Yep.
And becomes an 18-year-old.
Yes.
At the age of 14.
Yeah. And her mum was fully supportive of that in court.
Yeah, I mean, what else? I guess her mum's at the end of her tether at that point, isn't she?
She doesn't want to be her mum anymore.
She wants to go back to Studio 54 on her own.
Yeah, party, carry on. Yeah. Mm. Her mum, by the way, I googled her mum. Her mum in the middle of writing her autobiography.
About Drew, I guess.
Yeah.
That's why Drew should have filled in the gaps, because her mum will. And not in the way that Drew wants her to.
That's right.
And we're obviously going to take Drew's word for it over her mum, because we like Drew a lot more than we like Drew's mum. So Drew's missed a trick here by not talking about stuff.
Probably hasn't. She'll probably publish another one and make another mint. So she's got an apartment, right? And she's got a job at a nearby coffee house. She reckons the bloke only took her on because he thought it was quite funny to have a faded ex-child star working behind the counter. She was crap. She was always late. She didn't know anything. She didn't even know how to use a sponge.
Yeah.
She just had never looked after herself. She didn't know how to do the laundry. It had to pile up to a mountain before she had to tackle the laundromat. Well, you wouldn't at 14.
No,
anyway,
you
I
wouldn't.
didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she just basically had to teach herself how to be a grown-up. Then she suddenly realised she'd actually left school. She hadn't even occurred to her she wasn't at school. She went, right, well, I do love reading, so I'm just going to read absolutely everything, all the classics, and whilst I read them, I'm going to study every word I don't know and learn it and read the dictionary. And that's what she did.
Had she ever been to school? Because she was a successful child actor. She tells us she was getting 4 hours of schooling on the set of E.T. And then she was in an institution for a couple of her teenage. Did she talk in this book about ever actually going to a school?
I don't think she talked about it, but she must have on and off because she wasn't constantly acting.
Must she? If her mother's not really looking after her, maybe she just never went. Because, like you say, now she's an adult. She kind of forgot that she should still be at school. So maybe she had been at school to realise that.
Oh yes, because there's that chapter where it's called Seagull, where she talks about being at school and everyone got a packed lunch.
Oh yes.
And she never did because her mum didn't think to do it. So she'd always be scavenging and looking at everyone else's lunch boxes and trying to say, if you're not eating that, can I have it?
Oh, do you know what? Drew's mum is just useless.
Yeah, useless. There's a lot of them out there.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's how you know she was at school, because she says to this day, everyone calls her the seagull because she can't not look at everyone else's plates. It's just ingrained in her.
That's really sad that little girl had to do that. It's not. I don't think it's that her mum couldn't afford to give her a packed lunch. She just
sometimes forgot because when they were on set, they got fed, so she sort of didn't think of it. So yeah, she went to some schools.
I think there's lots of little insights like that kind of show you why Drew is so needy. Now, she's so constantly in need of approval, and she's always gushing at everyone, and I think she's so sweet. I do, and I think sometimes her overblown sincerity completely borders on insincerity, but I think it's because of these little things like not being given a packed lunch and being the only kid on the table, being forced into a position where everybody's eating her and having to like look at people so you might get a little piece of cheese or something. That's how she's become this annoying adult that she is now. I don't want to say annoying.
No,
I like her.
I have to say, now I've read this book, I'm going to look on her completely differently.
Yeah.
It is an insight into her thinking. And if you want to know all that other stuff, you can probably just Google it.
Yeah.
Because it was all in the tabloids. So maybe you read this book with the Google and piece together the whole picture.
Right. Can we talk about a film that she only mentions by title in this book, which in the 90s I thought was just such a fantastic little thriller. It was called Poison Ivy. Did you ever see it?
No.
Do you remember Sarah Gilbert, who was in Roseanne? So she was in a film with Drew Barrymore. And Drew Barrymore, like literally, this must have been after Emancipate. Well, she's about 17, 18.
Yeah, she said the coffee shop bloke just said, why don't you go out and find yourself? Because you're crap at this job. Go and find yourself. And then she really worked to get herself back into the film industry.
Yeah, and so she got this succession of roles in these little B movies, which were never going to make it to the cinema. They all ended up on VHS, and we all went to Blockbuster, and we'd get these like really cool little thrillers, low budget thrillers. And Drew Barrymore really shone in them because she's so charismatic. She actually is so beautiful. And this one film called Poison Ivy, I just remember I was knocked out by her performance. I thought, wow, this is Drew Barrymore, the little girl in E.T.
Wow.
It took some years after that, but I knew after watching that film, just the way the camera responded to her and how magnetic she was, I thought, no, she is now going to go on and become a huge star. This is her second chance. Though, interestingly, it didn't happen straight away. She had to do a few more of these little films. But she does. We say she had this upbringing where she's immersed with actors and she had this Barrymore name attached to her. Actually, let's not take away from the fact that she is a charismatic, beautiful, able, articulate human being. And that does come across on the screen.
And she's really learned the trade. Yeah. She's learned it from being around amazing people who've really taught her. Yeah, it's definitely her craft and her skill.
Yeah. She's not just got where she is because of a name.
That's very true.
Yeah, it helped her get a job as a baby.
Yeah.
She kind of did this whole amazing car crash by the age of 11.
I know.
Which most people reach at the age of 30.
I know. You've come out of rehab at 13.
And get a second chance.
Yeah.
When most people are still at school.
Yeah, but then to claw your way back in.
Yeah.
But bloody hell, I know. She's had a life.
She sure has.
Anyway, so around, it's 1994, so she's 19 at that point. She meets this woman called Nan.
Yeah, I hate that she's called Nan, because every time I read it, I kept thinking it's her
grandma. I know, it sounds like grandma.
But it's Nancy.
Yeah, it's Nancy. Yeah. But anyway, Nan, she's amazing. She walks into this room, she's got this beaming smile, she immediately loves her. She loves women. She falls in love with women all the time, much more easily than she falls in love with men. Yeah, this woman ends up married to Jimmy Fallon.
Yes.
And they're still happily married, they've got kids. It's all good. And she said the right person found the right person.
And I think the right person found the right person in the fact that Nan met Drew Barrymore at that moment in time.
Yes.
And I think this is actually, their meeting is the key to Drew's mega success as a film actress.
Absolutely.
I think if she'd not met Nan, I think Drew would have had an okay career doing little parts in various films. We'd all know who she was, but the fact she became a box office draw is because she met Nan, and together they created Flower Films.
Yeah, she does say that having such a messed up family, the bonus is that she was drawn to really together and strong people that would become her family, that she chose them. And she made the right choices. Yeah, because this woman was no messing. She'd go, you can't be late all the time. You say you want to direct, you can't direct because directors can't be late. The directors have to be leaders. You can't be this. And she really pulled her up on everything. And they read and they studied.
Oh, what I love about this, what I didn't realise, you would think, so Flower Films is a production company and they're going to start producing films. You would imagine Drew Barrymore to be so conceited and stuff that they go straight in, okay, what film can we make today? For like the first couple of years, they were approaching other productions and saying, can we just come and shadow you?
Yes.
So we can see what's going on.
4 films they did that on.
Scream was one of them.
Scream, The Wedding Singer, Home Fries.
And Ever After. So they basically hung out in the shadows watching every element of this filmmaking process before they even considered making one of their own, which I think shows why they became so successful.
Absolutely.
Because I would imagine some other Hollywood's like vanity production company would probably go straight in, put all the money in the first film,
Maybe
and then
that's just how we imagine it.
Yeah.
Because we don't know this business. It's so complex. Like when she talks about Adam Sandler and they were talking about this script going round and finally landing back in his hands because he had his own productions company as well. And we don't know the half of it. So he produces films and puts himself in them as well. I know Tom Cruise produces loads of his own films. How much of this is going on? These are business people and amazing actors.
She really courted Adam Sandler, didn't
Yeah.
she? She knew that because he was on. I didn't realise he come from Saturday Night Live.
I don't, because we don't have it. We don't know the half of American culture.
He'd had success with like Happy Gilmore and stuff, and she just knew, she saw something in him because she really wanted to do comedy, and she thought, we're going to do brilliant comedy together.
I think it's that wholesome thing again, because he doesn't have an edge, does he? He's a very lovely, wholesome person, and maybe that's how she decided she wanted to sell herself. It's like we said, maybe that's who she really feels like she is. And the wild stuff was an aberration.
I also think she considers herself a bit of a nerd, a bit geeky. And I think Adam Sandler, he's not like a classic handsome Hollywood guy.
Yeah.
So I think she kind of thinks he's kind of her match, and that's why they would make good comedy together.
Yeah.
And she said she wanted them to become one of these golden Hollywood couples.
Yes.
Like all these partnerships that we know, like
Bogey and Bacall.
yeah, and Fred Astaire and Ginger,
Yeah, that sort of thing.
Lucille
Yeah.
Ball and Desi Arnaz. She wanted them to become cemented as a couple. And do you know what? They kind of made a few films
I
together.
think they did 3,
Oh, was it?
but they were all so special.
And the first one was A Wedding Singer, right? Did you ever see it?
I did see it.
Is it good?
It's fun because it's the 80s.
Yeah, right.
But it's Adam Sandler's idea. That's pretty cool. Because she went and pitched herself to him, basically. Said, I want this. I want us to be a thing. Can we just think of maybe a project to work on? And he said, yeah, all right, cool. And then he pitched The Wedding Singer to her, and off they went. And they had the best time. So they're the most fun ever. And I can see this because she's really into music. But, at this time, she was going out with This Is Where We Want to Fill In.
Oh.
She was going out with every cool musician ever.
I'm so annoyed with this book because one thing that I know Drew Barrymore for is her iconic friendship with Courtney Love in the 1990s. Yeah. She doesn't even mention Courtney Love in this book.
She's the godmother of Kurt Cobain and Courtney Love's kid.
She doesn't even mention it.
No, she was married to the...
She was going out with Eric Lanson, who's the guitarist in Hole, Courtney Love's band.
Yeah.
It was a whole episode of her life. Now, I can only imagine...
Whole episode.
I can only imagine the reason she doesn't even mention it in this book is because she had a spectacular falling out with Courtney Love, maybe. Because most people do.
I suppose so. I just think she's chosen to keep all of that side of her life private and to sell you what she wants to sell you.
Because it doesn't fit in with her middle-class Laura Ashley, Mother Earth persona anymore.
Because there's a point where she's talking about being massively inappropriate, being on the David Letterman show, flashing her tits at him, which she did with her back to the audience, thank God, dancing on the table. And at this time she was naked in Playboy. This is all around when she's 19, probably just before this production company took off. Steven Spielberg sends her a quilt and a copy of Playboy where he's put clothes on all the pictures of her. And the note says, cover up. So she says, I can't believe I was ever so inappropriate because now I am obsessed with being appropriate and my appropriate behaviour, and I'm a mother and I've got to be like this, and I am so different from that now. So she's writing that book.
She also said, like, at the age of 20 or around that age, after David Letterman, she says it was then the next contracts for all of her films had no nudity clauses in them. So she decided at the age of 20 that she was going to cover up.
Yeah, she said actually watching that David Letterman show with her friends, they were all laughing. She looked around the room and looked at herself as well and went, that's it, it's over. And she said, though, to get out of the child star trap, like how people perceived her, she had to do all these vixen parts and she had to become a very sexual person to just move on.
I think that's a common thing. Like Britney and Christina, they both come out at the beginning like these American princesses. Yeah, and then all of a sudden they have to go full on sex people, and then they pull it back a bit later. But to get rid of the shackles of child fame, being considered a child star. I
guess so. And then once you've done that, you can create who you want to actually be. And she wants to be this nice middle class mother. Yeah,
well, she is, and I think that's fair enough. And I think you can be that. But you can still tell us about the amazing nights out you had with Courtney Love. Come on.
Yeah. She was like the woman that went out with the boys in the band, wasn't she, for a while?
If you like, you know that this is when the paparazzi like turned to video and stuff, and there are just countless videos of her and Courtney Love walking from bar to bar on like Santa Monica Boulevard, just pissed out of their heads, but having fun with the paparazzi, because the paparazzi would really be trying to upset Courtney, and they'd just be laughing back at them. So I think it seemed like they had a really great positive friendship, even though they were off their heads a lot. I want to know the ins and outs of it. But maybe it's stuff that she just couldn't.
She just doesn't want to go there. Maybe she was really miserable.
Yeah, maybe she's still coming to terms with her childhood and stuff at that point.
Yeah, she probably was. Anyway, the film stuff really turned her around. Partly the film stuff and partly adopting dogs, which she dedicates a chapter to. She finds 2 puppies. She wanted 2 dogs. She had them from the age of 19 and they died. The last one died when she was 35.
Yeah.
So that's 16 years of dog. That's taking you from teenage right through to being a major adult. She didn't have a proper adult relationship, really, until after her last dog died. And then she realised she wanted to become a mother because she was a mother to those dogs. She adopted 1 more. She basically had 3 kids.
What's amazing with her dogs, though, and as herself as a person, I guess it's because she's so used to being isolated as a kid, is that she went all over the world with those dogs. She had a Volkswagen camper van, and she would go to the south of France, or she'd go on holiday on her own with her dogs.
They went everywhere. They were her children. They were absolutely her children. Because if she's that sentimental over flowers, imagine what she was like over dogs.
Oh, well, yeah, she was, of course, devastated with each death. But when the first one died, because she got them both as puppies, said the other one died really soon after.
Well, there was a third one, wasn't there?
Yeah, but then when the third one died, she had it cremated and she took it to India and sprinkled its ashes at like Gandhi's house. It's kind of like, but why?
I know, but why? Because it comes in later. See, it's all split up with these bloody essays. It's this. We're talking in chronological order, by the way. This book's all over the bloody shop. So there's a later chapter because I thought, why are you brushing over this whole India trip? And later on, there's a whole chapter to it. She talks about this dream she had since she was a kid, a recurring dream, where she gets out of this aeroplane, she's in the desert, she's got this urn, and there's a whole huge hole in the earth, and people are dying, and it's all really dark. And I think when the dog died, she suddenly thought maybe that's what the dream was about. And so she went to India. I had to make that link. It's not definite, but she went to India with the urn to get off the plane to sort of do something like the dream, because it was such a spiritual connection with this dog.
But then she was in India, and then when she saw that plane, because it was quite particular, she said, "Oh, this is a plane from my dreams," and she was really nervous to get on it because she thought it was going to crash and she was going to die.
Yeah.
And then when she survived that flight, it kind of gave her a rebirth, didn't it?
Yeah, well, that's how she interpreted it, yes. But she was desperately looking for answers because she was so lost, because those dogs had taken her through that much of her life and given it meaning. And without them, she needed to find the meaning. She was that lost.
And she's on her own again.
Yeah.
Poor girl.
Nobody would ever have kids if they thought they would outlive them. And that's what you have to take on when you have dogs and they're like your kids. It's a tragedy to have to live through that.
People grieve their pets for the rest of their lives.
And especially if you can imagine how much you put onto them. Everything. Now she seems to be putting everything onto her daughters, and I do worry about that.
Do you?
Yeah, she might be putting too much on them, like a lot of these.
The thing, when she talks... So, just to flash forward, she's now married to a guy called Will, whose parents are very well-to-do.
Yeah, his dad was the CEO of Chanel.
When she goes to their house for the first time, and she says she's amazed because she actually walked around and there are framed photos of like Will's history. There's photos of him as a child in his mother's arms. There's photos of him as a kid on the beach. There are family photos. And she says, oh, wow, this is a family with history. This is what I don't have. And that's what she really desperately wanted. She thought that would make her complete. And it's kind of like, just because that wasn't your experience of a family, I do find it weird sometimes that people that do grow up in single parent families or were abused as kids, they do hanker and long for this secure family unit. But actually what they don't know is those secure family units are probably just as fucked up as the broken up families. Not necessarily.
Just because you got a nice picture together. Mind you, in this case, I think they really were really amazing.
Drew tells you so because that's the fantasy she's had in her head for a long, long time.
Maybe.
And this book is written for them. I did feel like she was gushing about her mother-in-law so much. She's gushing about all of that family so much. I still think there's...
She wants them to love her.
She wants them to love her. She still feels like a bit of an intruder.
Yeah.
Because she also talks about not having a formal education, yet Will's family are quite posh. So he had like the best education.
Yeah.
They're all very well read. They're all cultured. Yeah. She just feels like a bit of an outsider. And I think she's overcompensating for that by just telling the whole world in this book how she thinks they're the most perfect people in the whole world.
Yes.
I'm sure they have accepted her as part of the family. I think it's just Drew's insecurities.
That's true. They look lovely, don't they?
Yeah.
And then you see the picture of her with Will. He's gorgeous and he looks so lovely. And you think, oh, this is amazing. She's found true love. She's got 2 kids and they're finally happy. And that's the end of the book. Right. I Googled her.
Oh, no. What?
Will, ex-husband.
What?
Ah, I didn't know if you knew.
No.
I was gutted. I got to the end of the book going... How lovely. This was written 2015. She's all happy now.
Oh,
they split up.
What?
Within 4 or 5 years of marrying.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Oh, Drew.
I know. And she says they split up in 2016, a year after that book came out. There's no particular reason. They didn't particularly fall out. Now she's really good friends with his new wife. They've had a new baby.
Oh, God, these people.
She's editor of Vogue.
Of course she
beautiful.
is.
And Drew says, I don't want to be... ever go out with anyone again. I'm not having any relationship again. I'm very happy to be single. She's in love with her daughters. It's all about the kids. That can really break people up sometimes, because all of this book is about how amazing it is to be a mother, and sometimes that can be at the expense a little bit of
do you know what?
Relationship. Loving a man as well as your kids.
I'm just going to say it.
What?
She's a nightmare.
I think she might be.
Do you know what? I really like her,
but it's because she's messed up.
Yeah, no, I know that. Yeah. And I think she's such a nice persona to watch on screen. She does come across in her show, as opposed to her acting, when she's her real personality. She comes over as annoying, but you can see that everything comes from a good place. It's so full of good intentions, but 15 minutes in a room with her and I would go crazy.
Yeah.
And I think if you're married to her and if she's in your family, she probably would begin to drive you insane.
Yeah. Oh, I'm kind of glad that you didn't know about that, because it was a total bombshell for me as well.
I'm really
I
upset
felt so happy
about
for
it.
her, and then I was like, no. I thought she'd sorted it out. Of course, she hasn't. She hasn't had enough therapy yet. She hasn't.
Because there was something slightly uncomfortable about all the gushing chapters about her mother-in-law and stuff. Yeah. It's
and like you wonder who she wants more. She wants the kids. She wants the mother and dad. Does she want the husband too?
It's like she was creating the perfect family. She wanted us all to believe she had this perfect family. In her head, it was a perfect family. Turns out it wasn't.
No.
Oh, darn.
And of course, when she had the second kid, she had a total breakdown. She talks about it. It was her second daughter. She saw the daughter's face and it looked really like it desperately needed her. And she didn't get that look from the first baby. So when she saw this face that needed her, she just totally broke down, sobbing, wailing, because she didn't think that she could be there for that kid. And she didn't know where that was coming from. And she realised she had mother issues that she hadn't resolved yet. The second baby isn't so far away from the divorce, is it? So she hasn't sorted herself out.
Do you know what? I hope that she has some good friends around her and stuff, because I do think whether it's dogs or children or in-laws, she is desperate to find a secure family. I'm so sad for her that she hasn't found it.
And that's what I mean. I don't want her to put too much on those daughters.
It's probably too late.
Oh, bloody hell. Anyway.
So we didn't talk at all about Charlie's Angels.
We haven't talked about loads of... Okay, these are the films that they produced. This is absolutely brilliant, right? They made Never Been Kissed, Charlie's Angels 2, there was 2 of them. Donnie Darko, had no idea.
Yeah. I knew she was in it, but I didn't know that was one of their productions. Yeah.
50 First Dates, Music and Lyrics, Fever Pitch, which is where Jimmy Fallon met Nan. Whip It, He's Just Not That Into You, and more. And they made their employers over $1 billion. Wow.
Amazing, huh?
And I think she talks once about Charlie's Angels where she really breaks down what goes into it. Like, not only getting the script written, casting it. She found Cameron Diaz and Lucy Liu, and they had to track down Bill Murray from some payphone in New York, putting it all together. But then at the end, it's all the editing, but it's all the promotion, the design of it all, everything. Like, as producers, you're all over all of it, and you're responsible for making it a hit, even after you've made it. And that's all those films and more they've done that much work on.
Yeah.
She's worked her ass off.
And also being in those films.
And she's in them. And those are just the ones they produced. Yeah. She's been in tons of other films she doesn't even mention.
I have to say, Charlie's Angels at the time were particularly brilliant. They were so of the moment. And actually to have 3 women fronting an action movie.
That was great. And now it's really common, but it wasn't so much in the 90s.
But there's that chapter where her, Cameron Diaz and Lucy Liu go off trekking through the outback or something.
She's really pissed off the whole time.
Pissed off. But why did they do that?
Oh, it's some sort of promotion. They said, it'll be really good to say you've done this. You all go on chat shows together. And
they were all sleeping out on rocks with no sleeping bags and stuff.
Yeah, having to spoon each other.
And having to eat the trees and stuff.
Yeah. And abseiling, and she crashed onto the floor and she's absolutely swearing the whole time, fuck this, fuck this.
She said that the other 2 were just really embracing it and having a good time, and Drew Barrymore was just a bit. Yeah. So she's known Cameron Diaz since they were teenagers. They met at a model casting or something.
Yeah.
Did you notice at the back of the book where she thanks everyone? She thanks Cameron Diaz, but she doesn't thank Lucy Liu.
Ooh.
Her name's not there.
Oh. But they are particularly good mates, aren't they?
Yeah.
And like when they went to film 50 First Dates, it was Adam Sandler's genius idea to film it in Hawaii. Hey! So they get an amazing holiday out of it. And they've got this hotel on the beach. Cameron Diaz comes and says, I'm going to come and visit you, and gets the neighbouring bedroom suite, which has got opening doors that opens into an area in the middle that's shared. So they get a ping pong table put in there. Then all the cast and crew are always in their between room area playing ping pong, and they're having the best time. Cameron Diaz stays for the whole 3 months because she loves the surfing. I knew she was a surfer. She's just pottering down the beach every day surfing. Nothing to do with the film. That's how good mates they are. I have to say, she doesn't mention all the husbands, boyfriends, or any of them. She loves women. I sometimes think she should just get a woman mate or a pal.
Well, I think Nan is that to her. Yeah. Not all marriages have to be like traditional. I think lots of platonic relationships are like marriages.
They fill in for marriages.
More important than marriages, actually.
So she does actually have amazing relationships that are lasting and meaningful. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh God, I'm sorry. I'm still reeling from the news that she's divorced Will, because this book ends with her in such a
know.
Like such a good place, I almost didn't believe it.
I googled it so much to try and find out what happened. There's nothing mentioned other than they might have disagreed over where to live. I just know so many women that are so dedicated to their kids, the bloke gets pushed aside a bit.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, a lot of blokes like that though, don't they?
I don't know. But the love for them, the passion was for them, and the passion gets transported to the kids.
Oh, but then men can be arseholes because all of a sudden the wife isn't a wife anymore. She's a mother, and all of a sudden she's not attractive to them. So...
Yeah. So I mean, I'm not blaming her, but it's just she gushes so much over the kids. Yeah. There's 2 chapters to one for each, and it's letters to them, and it's all the love for them. There isn't a chapter for her husband, how much she loves him at all.
Oh, interesting.
And she doesn't really talk so much about him. She gushes more about the in-laws and more about her kids, and she misses him out.
So he was just a pawn in her quest to get the perfect family, and maybe he felt like he didn't have enough attention.
Well, we're going to have to read into it because she didn't tell us.
She didn't tell us.
No. I mean, she does say he's very nice.
I'm sure
he gets on
he
with
is.
all her friends, but not a lot more. Oh, I'm going to tell you. Okay, so she goes to do... Just before she meets and realises she's capable of having a real relationship and kids, she goes to Alaska and she makes this film, The Big Miracle, which is the worst acting I've ever seen in a film.
No.
Oh my God, it's awful.
What, from Drew Barrymore?
Yeah, it's so bad.
Is it?
Yeah, I think. But I went to see it at the cinema because I've got lots of friends in Alaska, in Anchorage, who all worked on that film. Like, Matt built all the icebergs and Carey painted all the sets and all of them. They all just worked on it. And some of them were in it. Some people know little bit parts in it. It's just, they literally moved up there and then used all the people who already were up there because there was a tax break. Anyway, my mate said Drew Barrymore was wandering around the set getting really pissed off because no one would sleep with her.
Really?
Yeah, she was asking every crew bloke, every carpenter, electrician, no one would sleep with her because the amount of men there are to women.
Yeah, right.
They've all got women. They're all like, sorry, I've got a wife. Sorry, I've got a girlfriend. I've got kids. She's going, why won't anyone sleep with me? What do I have to do to get some meat? She's literally, that's the quote. My mate heard her say that. So she's getting really livid. And she talks all romantically in this book about that period, and she came to terms with being single, and I'm laughing because I know it's because she couldn't get anyone to sleep with her. So there you go. I wrote that extra bit in there so you can get some truth.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Thrift Shop Biography. We love making this podcast and we're absolutely thrilled that so many of you are already listening. We're new to this and you could really help us out by leaving us a review somewhere, wherever you listen to this podcast. And if you could share us, tell your friends about us or drop some links on social media. We have a Facebook page called Thrift Shop Biography, so make sure you come over there to hear about the episodes first and what else we're up to. Okay, see you next week. And if you're new here, there are loads more episodes now to go and listen in the back catalogue, so make sure you go and enjoy them. Okay, thank you very much.